Hey there, Wolfpack fans. Welcome to the first Ramey's pregame pod of November 2024. This is publishing Saturday morning, November 2nd. Nevada hosting the Colorado State Rams at Mackey Stadium in Reno at 5 o'clock Pacific tonight. I'm going collar up like Eric Cantona because the Pack needs something a little extra tonight to break this conference losing streak. Nevada hosting Colorado State. Mike Edwards and me call the action on 105.7 FM over the airwaves here in Northern Nevada. Of course, you can listen to us for free on the Varsity Network app, or you can watch our Behind the Mic video feed of our broadcast booth from Mackey on the official Nevada Wolfpack Facebook page. So Nevada 3-6 overall, 0-3 in the Mountain West. After a rough start to their season, Colorado State, of course, led by former Nevada head coach Jay Norvell, is 5-3 overall, and the Rams are 3-0 in the Mountain West. We'll visit with Rams play-by-play voice Brian Roth, and also Mountain West insider Terrence Newman returns as we get you ready for the Pack in Colorado State tonight at Mackey. Excerpted versions of these conversations will air on the Bud Light Tailgate Show, and that starts as the opener for our broadcast coverage at 4 o'clock Pacific, ahead of the 5 o'clock kickoff here in Reno. Brian Roth and I started off talking about how much pressure is on Jay Norvell to win this year. It's Jay's third year with the Rams. Brian Roth, what year is this for you as the voice of the Rams?
So it's the 12th year overall as the voice of the Rams, and just did the Air Force football game was my 1,000th career CSU broadcast. That's women's basketball, men's basketball, and football.
Nice. So 1,000's a nice round number.
Yes. So we're at, this will be Saturday will be 1,002.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Oh God, I should start tracking that because I have baseball on my side. Although, I'm only in year 8.
I did it during COVID when I was bored as hell. I went in and I just did them, added them all up, and I just made sure I was figuring out, because I had to miss some football games back when I did women's basketball to do women's basketball. I'd missed men's basketball to be at football. So I meticulously went through and did every single one back during COVID, and just kind of a little project to do to keep yourself from dying of boredom.
That's right. That's good. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
I know, I'm not the new guy in the league anymore, but I still respect my elders.
Well, I don't think I'm anybody's elder outside of my 3 kids.
There you go. Okay. Jay Norvell gossip, right? People in Northern Nevada have maintained an interest about Jay's career arc with the Rams for understandable reasons. How hot has his seat been here in year 3?
Well, I mean, it is hot. And whether that's fair or not is, people can make their own decisions about that. Year number 3 for Jay. First year, they went 3-9. Had the worst offensive line that I think I've ever seen. Had Clay Millen, a Nevada transfer. He got sacked, I think, 56 times in that first year. And so you go into year number 2, and Colorado State, in the final game of the season last year, they were sitting at 5-6, and they were in Honolulu taking on Hawaii, and Colorado State loses on a last-second field goal. You go 5-7, and I think that made some people a little restless because they thought Jay was going to come in and immediately turn this thing around based on his track record there at Nevada. And so year number 3, this was a big year for Jay coming in. There was no question about that. And really, I think the prevailing thought was the baseline would be 6-6. That's like the lowest he could go. The worst season he could have would be 6-6 and go to a bowl game. And obviously the Rams sitting at 5-3 right now, 3-0 in conference play. He's looking pretty good. Now, again, I'm not saying any of this is fair. It's just kind of what the reality is. But another big thing for Colorado State fans is beating rivals. Colorado State has been abysmal against rivals since 2015. In fact, I think the number was like 1-21.
Who are the
2015? Rivals are Colorado, Wyoming, and Air Force. Those are the 3 rivals, right? And so, Jay had to beat rivals this year. 2 weeks ago, he beat Air Force down at Air Force, snapping a 7-game skid for the Rams. So that was a big step forward. They have Wyoming coming up on November the 15th. That'll be another big game for Jay Norvell. But the administration's aggressive at Colorado State with the president, Amy Parsons, the director of athletics, John Weber. And I think with the facilities and the resources that Colorado State has dedicated to football, the expectation isn't to go 5-7 and 3-9, even 6-6. The expectation is get back, going to bowl games every year, and then you sprinkle in some flirtation with Mountain West Conference championships.
And in 2 autumns from now, Pac-12 or Pac number to be inserted conference championships. How has that announcement been received in the Rams community? And I assume it's pretty exciting for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think all Ram fans are excited. They don't want to get left behind, and whether or not that ship has sailed and it's too late, and they already are left behind and just don't know it. I mean, that might be the case, right? As college football and college sports continues to evolve, but again, with the investment that Colorado State made into the football program and what they're doing to athletics, they have the a mindset of do it at the highest level and compete at the highest level, and so I think moving on to the new Pac-12, everybody knows it's not going to be an automatic qualifier, right? It's not going to be the back to the group or the Power Five with the Pac-12 being now part of the upper echelon. Nobody believes that. But I think what the administration is looking at this as, look, we want to be at the highest level we can be at. And, does Washington State and Oregon State, do they represent that? Does the new Pac-12 kind of put you into that next best from the A4? And certainly with the addition of Gonzaga, I mean, I think it is going to be a step up. But, that's just the mindset of this athletic administration and the university administration as a whole.
I mean, you won't get the trip to Laramie anymore, but you get to keep the trip to Logan.
Yeah, the trip to Logan, which is one of the hardest places to get, at least for us.
Yeah.
For everybody else, it's probably Laramie. But the rivalry with Wyoming, I think, is going to stay in place. I know their athletic director and John Weber, the director of athletics at Colorado State, they have been in discussions about keeping that rivalry going. I think the fan bases would love to see it. I mean, John, 60 miles separates Laramie and Fort Collins, even though the towns couldn't be more different. But I think everybody enjoys that rivalry with Wyoming. And I think you'll see that stay. The rivalry that I think will probably go away, at least on a consistent basis, is the one with the Air Force.
Let's talk about this season and this matchup with the Wolfpack. The first thing that jumped off the page for me, just building my charts, was that Colorado State is averaging 182 yards per game on the ground and throwing for 186. Now, Jay Norvell, when he was with Nevada, talked a lot about running the ball and being physical, but especially on the teams that made runs near misses at conference championships for Jay here with the Pack, there wasn't a lot of running. So has this been a necessary evolution? Surely this can't just be because Torrey Horton got hurt, right? How did it come to be that the Rams are playing this balanced brand of football?
Jay's talked about this, and he said it happened in the offseason, and he was looking at how to build a football team and how to win close games. Because I think with the way Jay views his conference and his roster is that, and really the way that last year played out, is Colorado State played in close games, seemingly each and every week. And I think Jay was trying to figure out and find a way, how do you get an edge in close games? How can you close out teams if you're ahead coming down the stretch? And so, I think he just thought that, hey, if you're going to be a championship football team, if you're going to win close games, you've got to be able to run the football. And Colorado State was not able to run the football last year. And, we always joked successful air raid rushing attack should be around 120, 130 rushing yards per game, right? But last year was 92. Well, this year, Colorado State is averaging nearly, 92, 93 yards more per game rushing than they did last year. So it was something that he decided to make a change in the offseason. The CSU defense, they weren't exactly sure what that unit was going to look like. And he felt like if you're going to throw the ball over the yard, your defense might get exposed a little bit because they'll be on the field more than, say, a normal defense would be. And so I think that was one of the reasons why they wanted to do it as well. But, I think the way that Jay's talked about it is that, the big numbers, the big passing numbers, all of that is empty if you don't have wins. And he felt with this roster, the best way that they were going to win is to be more of a ball control football team. And, they're bringing back a very experienced offensive line. Jacob Gardner, the starting center, who of course was a tackle at Nevada, has started every single game in his career. It'll be his 53rd consecutive start coming up on Saturday night. He has a chance to play in the NFL. He anchors that offensive line that they thought was going to be pretty good coming into the season. So, it's just a whole shift that Jay made in the offseason. He put it into fruition at the start of the season, and it's taken Ram fans a little while to get used to that because they were expecting another, air raid type of season from this Ram offense and hoping to see that points per game number goes up. But what has gone up is wins. And at the end of the day, I think we all know it's the only thing that matters. And I think Ram fans have become accepting of the new style of offense because the wins have accompanied it.
Yeah, you guys started off the year with a couple of pretty nasty losses. The blowout loss at Texas was the opener, and then a loss to Colorado, which, as you mentioned, was one of those critical rivalry games. And it wasn't as close as the game against Colorado had been the previous season. But now the Rams are 3-0 in the conference, and they control their own path now to the championship game. Is that something that's starting to take root just as people get excited about the stretch run?
Yeah, there's no question. And you go back to the Colorado game, John. And again, the Rams should have won in Boulder last year against Colorado.
A wild game.
A wild game, and CSU blew an 11-point lead in the final 8 minutes and ended up losing in double overtime in that game and felt like they gave one away. Colorado was coming to Colorado State for the first time since 1996. Earlier in the week, the Rams announced that they were going to the Pac-12, so the fan base was fired up. Fort Collins was on fire that weekend. Largest crowd ever to see a Colorado State football game. And the Rams laid an egg. And they only scored 9 points. Of course, Torrey Horton wasn't healthy. And Ram fans walked away from that, John, being like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, again, it's another opportunity against a rival that Colorado State floundered in. And that, I think, set people on a path of like, whoa, here we go again. It's the same old Colorado State football that we have seen for the last 6-7 years. But now that you see that Colorado State probably should have beat Oregon State. They gave away a lead at the end of that game that's got into overtime 3-4 weeks ago. But then you've reeled out 3 straight, all in conference, as you mentioned. And now all of a sudden, this is a Colorado State football team that was looking like they have a chance, if you continue to win some football games, to kind of be in the mix for a conference championship. Now, is CSU on the same level as Boise State? No, I don't think anybody is. But hey, Colorado State, you can only play the schedule in front of you, and they have maybe an opportunity to do that. So I think fans are like, okay, all right, start of the year was rocky, but we kind of see how this thing's playing out. And if we have to win ugly, then let's go, because it's been a fan base that has been just dying for winning football.
You say win ugly. Last week, New Mexico 17-6, the final score, but a W. Do you see this game in Reno being a low-scoring dogfight like that?
Well, it's what the Air Force game was 2 weeks ago. I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, it was kind of what the San Jose State game was, 3 weeks ago, the week after Nevada played them. So that's the way this thing is trending now. It's funny, in the second half of that game, Rams were up 17-3 at halftime against New Mexico. And CSU didn't do anything on offense in the second half, and it was almost by design. It was almost like they were playing 4 corners in basketball and just bleeding the clock and just trying to take the air out of the ball. Rams ran 20 plays in the second half. 15 were rushes.
Wow.
They only threw for 4 yards in the second half of that game. But it worked, right? The defense was opportunistic. And so, that's kind of been the MO. The Rams did the same thing in Air Force. They were up 21-0 with about 26 minutes to go in that game, and then just took all the air out of the game and just basically ran the football every single time they had it. So if you see CSU go up maybe a 14-3 on Saturday night in Reno, chances are they're going to try to take the air out of the ball and make that a super low scoring game. It's just kind of been the MO for Jay Norvell and this coaching staff. So I guess I would have to say, yeah, perhaps. But then again, John, we went into that game last week against New Mexico. Their defense was one of the, if not the worst defense in the nation. And their offense is one of the best offenses in the nation. And we all thought that'd be a shootout in a game that was going to be played in the 30s, maybe even the 40s. And there ends up being a grand total of one offensive touchdown scored in that game. So who knows?
He is Brian Roth, play-by-play voice of the Colorado State Rams. Colorado State visiting the Wolfpack tonight at Mackey Stadium, 5 o'clock kickoff here in Reno. Mountain West insider Terrence Newman returns to Ramey's pregame pod. Terrence and I discuss the disappointment on the island, the loss to Hawaii last Saturday, and we also talk about what the Pack needs to do well tonight to beat the Rams. Terrence Newman, I have to start this conversation with a correction, as I often remind our listeners, do not trust any information source that doesn't issue corrections, right? Reputable journalists issue corrections when they make an error because people make errors. In the second half at Hawaii, I quoted Thomas Paine from The American Crisis. These are the times that try men's souls. It was published during the American Revolution. However, I misquoted Thomas Paine and said it was Patrick Henry. I believe Patrick Henry, might misquote this and issue a correction next week. I believe Patrick Henry.
I'm sure there was a lot of people listening at home that were real pissed when you said that.
It was after midnight Pacific, so.
There's a lot of people in Reno correcting you in their homes while listening.
Right. Yes. And so I believe Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. But it was Thomas Paine who said, these are the times that try men's souls. Now, he was discussing the American Revolution. We were discussing something far less serious, but still painful. Which is
it still gave me pain to watch.
Terrence, Nevada went more than 60 minutes of football, the entire second half against Fresno State and the entire first half against Hawaii without a point. Now, in speaking with Jeff Choate yesterday, he said, look, without Brendan Lewis, Savion Red got one carry. The offense, especially the quarterbacks, Chuba Purdy and A.J. Bianco, did okay. I think what's much more concerning is the defense right now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No, you can make excuses for the offense. Like you said, they were down to the third string running back for most of the game because Garwo didn't even play a whole lot.
Now Garwo had a hyperextension of a knee, I believe.
Yeah, so we're going with backup quarterbacks, third string running back.
Both tight ends got hurt. Andrew Savainea and Jaden O'Rourke got hurt.
So there's no shame in the offense struggling. There's no excuse for that defensive performance. They made Braden Shager look like he was 2005 Michael Vick.
He did.
I mean, of all the teams in the conference,
scored 4
to
touchdowns,
run all over
Terrence.
you, Hawaii is the last school that should run all over you in the conference. That was a real eye opener. That was. I texted you during the game. That was the first game this year that it felt like I was watching last year's team. It had that vibe.
You texted that right after I had said to Mike during a commercial break a very similar thing.
Yeah. It was a real disappointing game. And honestly, I'd say almost every game before that, you could make a legitimate argument that Nevada was going into that game at a talent deficit. I thought this was the one game where they were not at a talent deficit. But it looked like it when you watched it on the game, It was especially on the line, on the defensive line, was just getting pushed around. There
were injuries
no
there
excuses
too.
for it. There's really no excuses for it.
There were injuries there too. Christopher Ross got banged up. Thomas Woody got banged up. I mean, I did the coaches show. We're recording this on Thursday. It'll air Saturday afternoon. 4 o'clock Bud Light tailgate show. Mike Edwards and me. You'll hear an excerpted version of this conversation. And 5 o'clock kickoff from Mackey, Colorado State at Nevada. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, it's Saturday. But we're talking about this on Thursday. I had the coaches show with Coach Choate last night. I mean, he's like, we're going to have to conjure up a tight end. I mean, they're Nevada is banged up on both sides of the ball. And, that's why I made, reference to these are the times that try men's souls. I mean, if you think back just 2 short games ago, Nevada has defeated Oregon State. They'd come oh so close to winning the conference opener at San Jose State. And we're all
played was just as good as Fresno State for the majority of that game, if not the better team.
Yeah. At Fresno State or San Jose State?
At Fresno State and at San Jose State, honestly.
Right.
Both those games.
Yeah. And, now there's a hot Colorado State team coming in, and Nevada sees the calendar about to turn to November, and they're still looking for their first conference win. I mean, this is real. I mean, wins and losses but this is also I think this is a defining moment for year 1 for Jeff Choate, and just how his leadership, how much purchase his vision has on the program. Is that fair?
Yeah. It's going to be real important to see how this team bounces back. And that does speak to what the coaches are telling them during the week, how the coaches are getting them prepared. Yeah, they need to get back to what they were doing the weeks before and be able to put last week's game out of their mind. And so they're gonna need some good long-term memory, but some bad short-term memory, if you get what I'm saying. They need to kind of just, last week was last week. It was what it was. They can't go into this week dwelling on that. They need to remember the positives from the weeks before, and then see if they can continue to build on that. And it is Coach Choate's and the rest of the coaching staff's job to be able to get the players to buy into that and get them to still believe in this year, because there's still some wins out there for them this year.
Listen, Colorado State's won 3 in a row. They're 3-0 in conference, but they're certainly not a perfect team. And in fact, they're very different to what Jay Norvell had cultivated here. I mean, they're almost perfectly balanced. They beat New Mexico 17-6 last week. I mean, they're winning games, grinding it out, playing keep away with time of possession. They're rather similar, just kind of game management wise this year, to Nevada. And Choate also talked about that last night on the coaches show. You might not think it's a good matchup, just kind of thinking about, an air raid team that traditionally Jay Norvell wants to put the ball in the air. But this could be one of these, physical, tight games that maybe hinge on a punt,
Yeah. No, this team is a little different than what I expected when the season began. You were expecting more of a passing offense from them, and you're right, it is much more balanced. They have a really good running game, which is a little scary coming off of last week's performance, because Avery Morrow, senior running back, 4th in the conference with 711 yards, 6 TDs. He's going to be a handful. If they were struggling against Hawaii's run game, stopping Avery is going to be a real handful. But yeah, the passing game, well, Torrey Horton got hurt.
Yeah,
so he's out for the rest of the year.
They still have capable receivers.
But it's not the same without the number 1 guy. Right. It definitely changed the way they play. But there's still some playmakers on the outside. But the key to their offense right now is Avery Morrow.
So Morrow from Seattle was with the Pack and with Jay, as was Jacob Gardner, their starting center, as was Torrey Horton, the all-conference and now injured wide receiver for the Rams. So even in year 3, there are still some rather familiar characters on the roster from Norvell's Nevada tenure. And Morrow has just gone over 2,000 yards in his rushing career. He's at 2017.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. And, he was never the featured back. He was playing behind Toa Taua here at Nevada, but there was a lot of hope for him when he's
getting his opportunity now. He's making the most of it now.
So, yes, this game, Colorado State, I think, is a 1-point favorite on the road. So it's really coin flip. And you're right about the long-term memory. Nevada has to remember the team that played against SMU.
Yes.
And Troy.
Yes.
And San Jose State and Oregon State. Right. And I think that is the difference between this year's team and last year's team. Because, last week at Hawaii, this was reminiscent a little bit of the Ken Wilson Wolfpack in that there was a bit of a glass jaw factor. You get down one or two
They got
possessions
punched and then they could not get
curtains.
back up.
Right. But that has not been the case in the majority of games, wins or losses this year for this Jeff Choate Wolfpack. So, that's sticking with me, Terrence. Good long-term memory. They need to recall the swag, the confidence, the pop we saw.
Now, and
really everybody except for the second half of Fresno State, all of Minnesota, and that Hawaii game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
They played two and a half bad games.
Colorado State 5-3, 3-0 in the Mountain West, 1-2 on the road. Jay Norvell in his third season, 13-19 with the Rams, 46-45 overall. Last time out, they beat, as we mentioned, New Mexico 17-6 in Fort Collins, aka Fort Fun. Colorado State, Terrence, you liked them early, but then they had a couple disastrous losses early on. They got smoked at Texas, where they got shut out at Texas. You expect to lose at Texas, but you don't expect to get shut out. And then after a really good showing, a double overtime loss in a game they could have, maybe should have won a year ago against Colorado and Boulder, they get beat pretty soundly by an admittedly improved Colorado team.
A very good a ranked Colorado team right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
But at the time, it felt disastrous or,
I believe Colorado was coming off a bad loss to Nebraska the week before that game. So they were ripe for the picking. You're right. I was very high on this team when the season started. When we had our season preview at the beginning of the year, I remember I told you I thought Colorado State was my dark horse pick to win the conference and possibly make the playoff. Now, with three losses, with 3 losses, they're not going to make the playoff anymore. But they are right there to win the conference.
3-0 in league.
They're 3-0 in conference, and if you look at the rest of their conference schedule, I don't believe they have to play UNLV, and I don't believe they have to play Boise State either.
Yeah, coming down the stretch, they've got Wyoming, Fresno State, and Utah State. So you're right, they skip.
They skip
both Boise and UNLV. Now that
they get past Nevada, they have a very good chance of going undefeated in conference,
and that would put them in the championship game.
So they had a pretty bad showing against the 2 Power 4 conference teams that they played, but they've righted the ship and they are beating the teams they're supposed to beat. They do it a little bit different than what you would expect from a Jay Norvell team. Like we said earlier, it's a lot more run than pass this year. Coming into the year, I was high on their offense. The thing that had me worried was their defense. And it's actually been kind of the other way around. The defense has been pretty solid for them. They got a couple of really good linebackers. Chase Wilson, senior linebacker. Baum Jock, a sophomore linebacker.
It's actually pronounced Boom.
Is it Boom? Okay.
Wasn't that amazing for time? No, I know, but it's a linebacker, and his name is Boom.
That's a great linebacker name.
He leads the team with 71 tackles.
Yeah, well, they're both the 4th and 5th in the conference in tackles.
Yeah.
And so they have what I'd like to call a bend but don't break type defense. If you look at it, they're 4th in the conference in points allowed. They only give up 24.5 points, but they're 9th in yards allowed. So people move the ball on them. They're just not always scoring. So that's probably going to be the big key to the game. Is not just only can Nevada move the ball on them, because they should be able to move the ball. But when they do, they have to be able to turn those drives into points.
Here's another stat for you, Terrence.
They can't leave touchdowns out on the field, and they can't let drives that should be touchdowns end up being just field goals.
I totally agree. Now, when we talk about bend but don't break, Nevada has been to the red zone something like 28 times this year. Colorado State's offense has been in the red zone 23 times this year. Colorado State's defense has only allowed 18 drives into the red zone this season, right? The red zone stat is something I always have on my chart. I don't reference it that often because usually it's like all stats. I'm not terribly interested unless it's really surprising or helps illustrate a reality about a team.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying, bend but don't break. If you only have let people inside your 18 times this year in 8 games, it's not bad.
That's really good. That is really good.
And you can give up all the yardage you want between the 25s.
I mean, they don't keep score by yards. They keep score by points. You know, they don't keep score by how many first downs you got. They keep score by points. So, yeah, it's a stingy defense. When they need to tighten up, they tighten up. They turn your touchdown drives into field goal drives, and they turn your field goal drives into no score drives. And the key for Nevada is to make sure that they don't do that to them.
Brendan Lewis is back. I mean, that just
Huge.
Psychologically is a huge lift. I mean, he is the number one playmaker on the offense. And I would say, non-Ashton Ginty division among the very best playmakers in the conference.
Yes.
And so just getting him back is a big deal.
Yeah, actually, I think last week, I mean, we've been talking all year about how good he'd been playing. But in a weird way, last week and not having him only highlighted just how important he's been to this team this year. He really does make the offense go with his ability to scramble and pick up yards with his legs, and just the designed runs with his legs, and the way that opens up the deep passing game. And yeah, it really is a 3-headed offense between the running backs, the deep passing game, and then Brandon Lewis's legs. And then what we saw last week is when you take one of those 3 elements out, the house of cards kind of falls in on itself, So last week we didn't have Brandon Lewis's legs, and we didn't have our first 2 string running backs. So it's kind of hard to get the passing game to go when the running game is so depleted.
One other note on Nevada's defense: Colorado State has only surrendered 8 sacks this year. Nevada struggled to get pressure on Braden Shager last week. I mean, Nevada really has to fix something in the pass rush, I think. I feel like that. I mean, even Mikey Keene, Fresno State, he was not harassed enough. I guess in the second half, they only scored once. So,
no, that's been the biggest glaring weakness on the team so far. Has been the ability to get after the passer.
Yeah, if they could fix that, I think the defense suddenly becomes much more effective.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to scheme that up. It's they don't have the talent to just rush 4. They don't have that dominant defensive end or defensive tackle pass rusher that can command all the attention. So they're gonna have to find some ways to disguise some blitzes and bring some pressure from other areas, because just rushing with 4, it's just not enough pressure. The quarterbacks are having way too much time to sit back there.
All right. Any other thoughts or notes as we head down the stretch and the Pack hosts the Rams?
No, just it's easy to get a little down and depressed after last week's game. I think the Wolfpack fans need to look at the season as a whole. It's been a huge improvement from the last couple of years. This year's not over. Making a bowl game is going to be tough, but it's still possible. But it's going to be tough. But there's still wins out there. So I think this team still has a lot to play for this year. And yeah, I'm excited to see how they bounce back off of last week's game.
He is Mountain West insider Terrence Newman. Thanks to Terrence. Thanks to Colorado State play-by-play voice Brian Roth. Thanks to all of you for listening to and watching Ramey's pregame pod. You can always listen to the audio-only version wherever you get your podcasts and on the Watch and Listen tab on NevadaWolfpack.com. You can always find the YouTube version with video on the official Nevada Athletics YouTube page. Tune in to Mike Edwards and me starting tonight, 4 o'clock, with the Bud Light Tailgate Show. You can listen on 105.7 FM in Northern Nevada or online on the free Varsity Network app. Nevada and Colorado State at 5 o'clock from Mackey will have the call of the action for you, and it's free as always. We'll see you at Mackey. Peace.